Hare Jaya Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari 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 Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Shodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tirabhanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tirabhanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tirabhanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tirabhanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Raj Govardhan Hari ki, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining this morning and for this opportunity to serve by our discussions on Srimad Bhagavatam. We are reading from chapter 18 of Canto 4, which is titled Prithu Maharaj Milks the Earth Planet. This is text 15. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we'll read the verse. Kritva vatsang suraganam indrang somam aduduhan hiranmayena patrena viryam ojo balang payaha. And the translation is, all the demigods made Indra, the king of heaven, into a calf, and from the earth they milked the beverage soma, which is nectar. Thus they became very powerful in mental speculation and bodily and sensual strength. So you can all read word by word. Kritva vatsang suragana indrang somam aduduhan hiranmayena patrena viryam ojo palang payaha. And then line by line. Kritva vatsang suragana indrang somam aduduhan hiranmayena patrena Viryam ojo balang payaha Kritva vatsang suraganam Indrang somam aduduhan Hiranmayena patrena Viryam ojo balang payaha. Do you want to try to read? Yeah. Kritva vatsang suraganam Indrang somam aduduhan Hiranmayena patrena Viryam ojo balang payaha. Kritva vatsang suraganam Indrang somam aduduhan Hiranmayena patrena Viryamojo balang payaha. Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll read the word by word translation. Kritva, making. Vatsam, calf. Suragana, the demigods. Indram, Indra, the king of heaven. Somam, nectar. Aduduhan, they milked out. Hiranmayena, golden. Patrena, with a pot. Viryam, mental power. Ojaha, strength of the senses. Balam, strength of the body. Payaha, milk. And then the translation and purport is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada came. All the demigods made Indra, the king of heaven, into a calf, and from the earth they milked the beverage soma, which is nectar. Thus they became very powerful in mental speculation and bodily and sensual strength. Okay, the purport. In this verse, the word soma means nectar. Soma is a kind of beverage made in the heavenly planets, from the moon to the kingdoms of the demigods in the various higher planetary systems. By drinking the soma beverage, the demigods become more powerful mentally and increase their sensual power and bodily strength. The words Hiranmayena Patrena indicate that this soma beverage is not an ordinary intoxicating liquor. The demigods would not touch any kind of liquor, nor is soma a kind of drug. It is a different kind of beverage available in the heavenly planets. Soma is far different from the liquors made for demoniac people, as explained in the next verse. Om Jnanatmirandasya Gnananganashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshtarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So I also pray for all your blessings to do justice to this class. Must say it was a little bit of a surprising one. Discussion on soma. So let's see. There's a lot of nice references though that I found, which I was grateful to find. So the context of this verse is that thanks to Prithu Maharaj bringing the earth under subjugation, the various bounties that the earth possesses were now available to all living beings, not just on this planet we can see, but also the citizens, the denizens of the higher planets and the lower planets. But basically, the earth is a very important place. It actually benefits all beings from all of the planetary systems, actually. And so we see that higher beings like the demigods are coming to extract what they require from the earth. And we'll see in the next verse that the demons are also they're also going to come and achieve what bounties they want. It's often a meditation about Srila Prabhupada. We say that he's the Jagat Guru of the three worlds, because what he accomplished on this world is having such a far-ranging effect, because living beings on other planets are also being blessed. So, so it means that the earth as an energy of the Lord is capable of giving us or granting us, all beings everywhere, anything and everything that we desire, as long as we're qualified to receive it, right? As long as we're utilizing it for the right purposes, as long as He's pleased with us. So Prithu Maharaj, being pleased with all of the beings who surrendered to him, he took up their cause, and he made the earth submissive so that everything could be attained. And since she has taken the form of a cow, and a cow yields the bounty, which is obviously in relation to a cow milk, in affection for a calf, this is how she has instructed Maharaj Prithu. Whatever bounty it is that these various groups of personalities from all parts of the universe require from the earth, they're bringing a calf, a suitable representation of a calf, to induce affection in the earth, so that she will grant them what they need. So the demigods, the devatas, they have brought Indra as their calf, so that the earth will yield to them what they desire, and that is this beverage called soma. Okay, so there's a mistranslation or a misunderstanding of soma in many texts, because a lot of it was interpreted by Western scholars, and their understanding of the powerful effects of soma rendered them to think of it as an intoxicant, and that's the way that many of us also see it as, right? As a kind of liquor, basically. And Srila Prabhupada declares here very emphatically that it's not like that. He has said in so many places that the devatas are very highly advanced beings. Even if not pure devotees, many of them are, maybe the majority of them are, but a lot of them are, or all of them are at least on very high levels of goodness. And on that, or in that level, on that level, they're not going to basically indulge in the behavior of drunkards. They're not going to subject themselves to intoxicants, which are very much in the modes of passion and ignorance, and particularly when they induce complete forgetfulness of all common sense and reason and intelligence. So in fact, it's the opposite. Soma is described here as increasing their mental power, viryam, as well as, of course, increasing their bodily strength, right, their sensual strength as well. So it actually gives them, we could say, greater intelligence. And the bodily strength is, of course, very important to them, because the devatas are original defenders of the galaxy. Right? They're responsible for making sure that the demons don't take control of the universe. And so they actually depend on Soma to give them strength. Indra is said to have been drinking it when he conquered the great Vritrasur. So many other descriptions are given. And so we understand that if he's going into battle, he's not going to drink something that's going to dull his senses. Right? That would be very counterproductive. So actually, soma has the opposite effect. And we'll also read about how Krishna himself speaks of soma in the 9th chapter, that the brahmanas drink it when they're performing Vedic sacrifices. So again, we don't expect it to have an intoxicating effect, because when one is performing Vedic sacrifices, one has to be most pure, most in control of one's faculties. So this is a very interesting liquid. We know it's not an intoxicant, so what exactly is it? So in various places in the Srimad Bhagavatam it's described that it's actually it's extracted from a soma plant, and that plant, there's many speculations as to what that is, including some people obviously putting forth that it could be related to cannabis and so on, which is why Srila Prabhupada again emphatically says here that it is not even a kind of drug. So we can put that speculation out of our minds. It's not an ordinary plant, although in some temples in South India there's a plant that is utilized in that way. But what's important is that when this soma is extracted from the plant, it's extracted along with the soma yagya, right? A Vedic ritual, right, that empowers this drink to have the properties that it has. So in the 9th canto, in the 3rd chapter, we read, Syavana Muni then engaged King Sharyati in performing the Soma Yagya and gave the Ashwini Kumars the privilege to drink the Soma Rasa. The king of heaven, Lord Indra, became very angry at this, but could do no harm to Sharyati. Henceforth, the Ashwini Kumar physicians were able to share in the Soma Rasa. So it's very specific how this drink is prepared along with this yagya, which also explains why it may be so difficult for anyone to reproduce it in this day and age. We know that we don't have the qualifications to perform yagya anymore, not the way it used to be performed at least. But it's very necessary for this drink to have its properties, as this verse states. It's also noted to grant longevity. Right? Specifically, Srila Prabhupada refers to it or translates the word somam here as nectar. Amritam is another word for nectar. And this is very much coveted, again, because the demigods, they require a long lifespan to continue their services to the Lord in administrating the universe. And in other places as well, soma is referred to as amritam. When Srila Prabhupada quotes in the purport of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 42 to 43, he says, in other words, those who perform the 4-month penances become eligible to drink the somarasa beverages to become immortal and happy forever. Right? Apama somam amrita. Soma amrita. So, we could question, though, the demigods aren't exactly immortal, though, right? Everyone in this universe does die. But soma, it gives them such a great bodily strength that they can repel so many threats to their lives, right? Particularly when they're fighting the demons. And they have such an incredible longevity that it's almost like they are immortal. At least relative to us, they are. So this is therefore this drink is called amrita, for giving them this kind of immortality. And another point that we will note about it is that it's not exactly the same, though, as the amrita that they got from the churning of the milk ocean, because that amrit was specifically achieved from the bottom of the milk ocean. And here we've said that the soma that the demigods drink is extracted from a plant through the soma yagya. So although it's not exactly the same, it confers to them almost the same benefits, right? And they need it regularly, and they achieve it through preparing it and through sacrifices. So the way that the soma is related to the milk ocean, though, is that soma is identical to or comes from the moon. It's the energy of the moon, hence when it's prepared here, It's prepared through the Soma Yagya, and when Srila Prabhupada explains that very pious beings attain the moon, they can drink this Soma at the same time. And the moon came from the milk ocean. This Srila Prabhupada explains in Canto 3 in Chapter 2, Text 8 in the purport. It is learned from the revealed scriptures that the moon was born from the milk ocean. So therefore this Soma produced in conjunction with the moon has all of these great powers. And Srimad Bhagavatam speaks so beautifully of the powers of the moon as well. In Canto 5, Chapter 22, Text 9 to 10. The moon is the source of nectarian coolness that influences the growth of food grains. And therefore the moon god is considered the life of all living entities. He is consequently called Jiva, the chief living being within the universe. Because the moon is full of potentialities, it represents the influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Giraj Govardhan Hari ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Srila Prabhupada ki. The moon is the predominating deity of everyone's mind, and therefore the moon god is called Manomaya. He is also called Anamaya because he gives potency to all herbs and plants, and he is called Amritamaya because he is the source of life for all living entities. The moon pleases the demigods, pitas, human beings, animals, birds, reptiles, trees, plants, and all other living entities. Everyone is satisfied by the presence of the moon. Therefore the moon is also called Sarvamaya, or all-pervading. So this also helps us understand what the earth's connection is, because then we may ask, why are the demigods collecting Soma from the earth if it's connected to the moon or requires the moon for production? Well, we just read that the moon gives potency to all herbs and plants, and where do all the herbs and plants come from? From the earth. So that's the connection. The moon gives the moon gives potency to these plants and herbs. The earth yields them, and of course all of this is done by the power of the Supreme Lord, who's the seed of all existences, right? The seed from which everything comes from, all plants and creepers. Okay, so now we understand how these entities are all connected to the Lord and to this process, and so the demigods are approaching the earth in order to receive the Soma beverage. So in terms of intoxication, there are other liquors that the demigods actually have access to. Right? Of course, Srila Prabhupada says they wouldn't touch it, but we understand, and this is a point that we'll also touch on a bit later on, even if someone is very much situated in the mode of goodness, they will sometimes come under the mode of passion or ignorance, or at least they are at risk of coming under the modes of passion and ignorance. That's why goodness is not good enough. We'll always be in danger of this, because the modes are always competing with each other. So sometimes it happens to the demigods that they come under the spell of passion and ignorance, and then there are other beverages that they can get intoxicated on. So in the 10th canto we read that Nalakuvara and Manigriva, they were actually drinking wine. Okay, so it wasn't Soma exactly. And Srila Prabhupada also states in another Canto 1, Chapter 15, that the demigods are used to wine and intoxication of that. They don't need Soma to actually be intoxicating. But then Srila Prabhupada says in Canto 5, Chapter 15, that they can get drunk on Soma. Yeah. But again, we know that there's no such thing as contradictions in spiritual life, so we'll work this one out shortly. Let's read that reference. In Maharaj Gaya's sacrifices, there was a great supply of the intoxicant known as Soma. King Indra used to come and become intoxicated by drinking large quantities of Soma Rasa. Right. So Prabhupada also quotes in it's also stated in Canto 9, Chapter 2, Text 28, that Indra also got drunk on Soma. So let's start with what Srila Prabhupada says here, that it is not an ordinary intoxicating liquor. But if we look at this verse, Indra got drunk because he drank large quantities of it. So that's the importance. It's not a liquor, but in large quantities it can produce an intoxicating effect. It's like anything in this world. Right? Fruit is not inherently liquor, but if you ferment it enough, it can produce liquor. Right? Sugar as well. Anything actually that is utilized in a different way than its purpose can produce an intoxicating effect. And that's the problem with things of this world. And therefore certain foods as well, right? If we have them in their regular quantities, like Srila Prabhupada explains, that sugar is quite good. It should be utilized in the service of the Lord. Right? When the devotees tried to substitute sugar, he was very unhappy. He said that the natural foods must be utilized. If we can't have it for some health reason, then we should have less of it. But the Lord should have the ingredients that are required for his satisfaction. So, and then he made a nice point that actually if the ants have too much sugar, they get drunk. It has an intoxicating effect. Thought that was kind of funny. So, so we can see that soma, like everything in this world, needs to be taken within restriction. And therefore the brahmanas, when they take soma, they restrict it. It's within the religious rites and rituals so that they don't suffer from the intoxicating effect. And also, of course, our intent is important. The brahmanas, their intent is to receive spiritual knowledge. Right? King Indra's intent is to get drunk. Right? When we look at that verse in Canto 9, it says, the brahmanas were happy with their contributions as priests, and King Indra and the Kshatriyas were interested in drinking. So our intent very much matters as to how we will behave towards these substances and how the substances will affect us as well. So basically it means that soma can assist the brahmanas and the kshatriyas accordingly. Right? The brahmanas in terms of Vedic rituals and knowledge, and the kshatriyas in terms of the mental, bodily, sensual strength that they need to carry out their tasks. Right? The kshatriyas, Indra and others, although they're born of a brahmana father, they're very much in the qualities of kshatriyas. Like we said, they're defending the universe, so they require these kshatriya qualities, and the kshatriyas are based very much in the mode of passion. So we can expect the soma to influence them in that way. And something else that I found that was very interesting is that the ancient Iranian cultures, they share of course we know all cultures of the world share roots with the Vedic culture, but in particular with regards to soma, there's a drink called holma in the Iranian culture, and one reference states that it grants speed and strength to warriors, excellent and righteous sons to those giving birth, spiritual power and knowledge to apply themselves to study. So very much in line with our readings today. So the brahmanas of the previous ages that were so advanced, they could produce the soma, right, and they could utilize it in their rituals, both as an offering to the devatas and as well as for their consumption. And it's recorded extensively in the literatures as food, the food of the gods. Right? So it was required to be offered during the yagyas. And in Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada writes, according to the Vedic system, wherever there is an arrangement for sacrifice, the members participating are offered the juice of the soma plant, which is a kind of life-giving beverage. On the day for extracting the soma juice, King Yudhishthir very respectfully received the special priest who had been engaged to detect any mistake in the formalities of the sacrificial procedure. So what's significant here is that Maharaj Yudhishthir's Rajasuya sacrifice was conducted under the guidance of Krishna. So soma was part of the rituals, again under the instruction of the Supreme Lord, and that's the significance. And Indra, of course, is always he's always receiving this offering to him. Right? He likes it very much. Many yagyas are dedicated to him. Right? So soma is very much a part of all the Vedic yagyas. It's actually said that about a quarter of the Vedic hymns are for Indra. We may find that a bit interesting because Indra is not very well known in what is Hinduism today. But in the past, he was quite central because yagya was so central to people, and particularly what yagya brought to them in a very agrarian society. in a society that depended on rain, and which Indra is responsible for. And we remember this from Krishna book as well, because even the inhabitants of Vrindavan were performing yagya to Indra to get rain. And this is the significance. So in the passage of time, as people became less fully dependent on the Supreme Lord, like in Satya Yuga, they required yagya to produce things that now they had to get on their own. And the way that they got those things was through the devatas. Right? So basically in the transition from Satya Yuga, we'll read here, to Treta Yuga, the Vedas expanded to include all these rituals we now call karma kanda, that are dedicated to the devatas who would give them all these things. So let's read from the chapter 14 of the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, text 48 and 49. In the Satya Yuga, the first millennium, all the Vedic mantras were included in one mantra, Pranava, the root of all Vedic mantras. In other words, the Atharva Veda alone was the source of all Vedic knowledge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, was the only worshipable deity. There was no recommendation for worship of the demigods. Fire was one only, and the only order of life in human society was known as Hamsa. O Maharaj Parikshit, in the beginning of Treta Yuga, King Pururava inaugurated a Karmakanda sacrifice. Thus, Pururava, who considered the yogic fire his son, was able to go to the Gandharva Loka as he desired. And so as people degraded, we could say, and wanted material things or required material things from the Lord, the Vedic sacrifices were made available or known to them in order to provide these things. And the sacrifices go through the demigods who provide these material things for them. Right? So in the purport it says, in Satya Yuga, Lord Narayan was worshipped by meditation. Kriteyad dhyayato Vishnum. Indeed, everyone always meditated upon Lord Vishnu Narayan and achieved every success by this process of meditation. In the next Yuga, Treta Yuga, the performance of yagya began. Tretayang yajito mukhei. Therefore this verse says, Trayi treta mukhei. Ritualistic ceremonies are generally called fruitive activities. So, because people then, of course, degraded more and more till this day, these Vedic sacrifices got prominence. It became almost like the reason for the Vedas. And of course, with that, the prominence of the devatas, those who would give them the things that they would want, right? Including personalities like Indra. Although in the last few thousand years, we can see that his popularity has also grown less as people require different things. They don't pray to him for rain anymore. But the bottom line is all of these sacrifices require that one engage in this Soma Ras production. And so Krishna says in chapter 9, text 20, Traividyamang Soma Paha Puta Papa Yagir Ishtva Swar Gating Prartayante Te Punyam Asadya Surendra Lokam Ashnanti Divyan Divideva Bhogan. Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, the word Traividya refers to the three Vedas, Sama, Yajur, and Rig. A Brahmana who has studied all these three Vedas is called Trivedi. Anyone who is very much attached to knowledge derived from these three Vedas is respected in society. Again, respectful people are drinking this Soma Ras, as Srila Prabhupada, as Krishna has mentioned. So now we've at least settled that argument that it's not just some ordinary liquor. It is something that is important to the Vedic rituals, but unfortunately it's related to rituals that are for material benefit. It doesn't have spiritual value. There's a difference with it. Right? It helps those in the mode of goodness, but it can't actually get one beyond that. And therefore Srila Prabhupada says in the purport of Canto 7, Chapter 2, Text 48, there is a Vedic statement, Apama Somam Amrita Abhuma Apsarobhir Viharama. With reference to such a conception, one wants to go to the heavenly planets to enjoy with the young girls there and drink Somarasa. Such imaginary pleasure, however, has no value. as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 23. Antavattu palang teshang tad bhavati alpamedhasam. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Even if by fruit of activity or worship of the demigods one is elevated to the higher planetary systems for sense enjoyment, his situation is condemned in Bhagavad Gita as antavat or perishable. So this is why we don't focus at all on soma, because all the benefits that it can bring us are temporary. The happiness one enjoys in this way is like the pleasure of embracing a young woman in a dream. For some time it may be pleasing, but actually the basic principle is false. The mental concoctions of happiness and distress in this material world are compared to dreams because of their falseness. All thoughts of attaining happiness by using the material senses have a false background and therefore have no meaning. So this is for emphasis, because even though we've described that certain people, Kshatriyas, Brahmanas, even the Devatas, they require this drink, devotees don't require this drink. Right? This is for those who are interested in temporary pleasures, even if those pleasures are of a higher nature than the ordinary drunkards of this world. It's not going to get us to the eternal goal. It's not of eternal benefit. It's not of any importance in the practice of spiritual life. Although I just thought something that was interesting is we do prepare an apparently intoxicating drink for the Lord called Varuni. So what's the difference with Soma and Varuni? Because now we may think there is something in the same manner. Now, Varuni is not an ordinary drink, right? Even though you have ordinary liquor, as Srila Prabhupada states, right? The demons are going to be extracting that next. Then there's Soma, which is not an ordinary liquor, but it's an ordinary drink of this world. And then you get Varuni, which is neither. Varuni is actually the Lord's energy. She's a personality, takes birth or appears as the daughter of Varuna, and then she becomes this liquid for the service of Krishna, for Balaram. There's the difference. So she is engaged in devotional service. She is a spiritual energy, and she serves him by making him appear to get intoxicated. So the Lord in his pastimes, he does things that we may not expect. Right? He becomes the child of parents, but he's never the child of anyone. He's the source of everyone. In the same way, he wants to experience intoxication, so he appears to get intoxicated. Okay? It's only the appearance of. It's not the same as us. And when we try to imitate him as perverted reflections, we get intoxicated. All our desires are present in him. Right? We are the reflections of his desires. So there's the difference. And there's a few references. His Grace Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu helped me to clarify these interesting points. So in Canto 10, chapter 65, text 23, as his deeds were sung, Lord Halayuda, this is Lord Balaram, wandered as if inebriated. The next verse, he was intoxicated with joy actually. And then the verse after that, the Lord summoned the Yamuna river so that he could play in her waters, but she disregarded his command, thinking he was drunk. Right? So all of this indicates that the Lord wasn't drunk. And then in chapter 67, text 10, he was singing amidst a crowd of young women, this is Lord Balaram again, and since he had drunk Varuni liquor, his eyes rolled as if he was intoxicated. Okay, so all of the references are clear that the Lord wasn't intoxicated. He was always the Supreme Lord and always in control of his faculties, but he was enjoying as if he were. Okay. So then I'm going to throw another reference here. There's also a Varuni that presides over drunkards, ordinary drunkards, and this is mentioned in the 8th canto. So naturally we can understand that this is the reflection of the Lord's energy in the material world, right? The same way Srimati Radharani is reflected as the material energy. And in particular, this Varuni was possessed by the demons. She came out of the ocean of nectar, and so this is why we get the reflection, we are the imitation of the Lord in his pastimes. And so generally, not generally, always, we should avoid any kind of intoxication. We cannot ever imitate the Supreme Lord. So we try, of course, in our offerings to be we must be under the protection of the spiritual energy. So when we prepare Varuni, it's not the same as the Varuni of the drunkards. Right? We prepare it under the guidance of the spiritual master, with love for the Lord, according to the directions of Scripture, all these elements in place so that it's actually an offering that the Lord will accept, right? An offering of a higher nature, right? Which is in contrast to offerings of a lower nature like cigarettes, like meat, like alcohol, so on. So now we'll go back to Soma quickly, because there's one more important point as to how it's actually not good for the demigods, because in this verse it says that it also increases their sensual strength. It's very important for someone who's fighting battles, but the problem is that when it encourages one to be so situated in the mode of passion, then it will also affect one's behavior. Right? And the devatas, they often come under this spell of passion, and so they do things that are a little bit questionable. Right? They have illicit connections with the wives of other devatas, and it happens from time to time. So again, this is coming to that point that we touched on earlier, that it's not enough to be situated in the mode of goodness. Right? It's actually just as precarious. Basically, any position in this material world, no matter how elevated, it's dangerous. There's always the chance that we'll fall under the lower modes, and we don't know what may happen when we're under that influence. And therefore we see so many examples in the scripture of when the devatas are affected by passion and ignorance. So something very important for us to note in this regard is that we don't become offensive to them whenever we read of these things. The importance of us, there is enough examples amongst human beings, even among devotees, of also falling from spiritual life and making mistakes. But the reason these are always brought to our attention, particularly through the devatas, is of course because they're such elevated beings, they're such advanced personalities, they've reached such a height in this material world that it brings to our attention that if they can fall, it can happen to anyone. It's just to impress on us this danger, that even if we remain in this world, we will never be safe, right? No matter how advanced that position may be. They get to the heights of, think about Lord Brahma, for example. We respect him very much. Many speakers have brought to our attention that he's actually the head of our sampradaya. He's the most pious being from the previous creation that has earned this right to actually, the Bhagavatam describes, he's almost like the Lord in his creative powers. And that's how powerful he's become. But even such, he falls under the influence of the modes, right? And he chases his own daughter out of lust, right? So this should inspire a healthy kind of fear, right? If I can put it that way, that we can fall from whatever position we're in. We're never safe as long as we're in this material world. It should inspire humility, and that should lead us to complete surrender, right? To keep praying to all the Vaishnavas, to our Acharyas, to the Lord, for spiritual strength to overcome all these tests and trials, which will not stop until we've attained the spiritual plane. And we have to be very mindful of it. And so these examples will come up from time to time in our readings and in our discussions, not to bring the demigods down, and certainly not, God forbid, that we think we're better than them, right? But to keep reminding us, this could be me. This could be me. So it should actually, instead of making ourselves feel better than them, right, it should make us feel more humble. It should make us more aware of our failings, and it should make us more dependent on the Lord, right, more determined to keep praying for mercy and strength, and the ability to overcome the material nature, which is so powerful. So we are very fortunate that we have spiritual processes that are directly from the internal potency. Right? As we compare things that are relative in the material world, right? So whereas there's these yagyas that, even though situated in the mode of goodness, can only get you so far, we have the yagya of the holy names, which can deliver us to the spiritual world. Right? Whereas there are food grains that are offered even amongst those who are, there are food grains that are offered in these sacrifices. We get to offer it directly to the Supreme Lord. Right? The performers of sacrifices can only offer to the devatas, and they can only get temporary benefit, but we can get eternal benefit. Even the drinks that we have, right? We have Varuni, which is spiritual, versus the Somaras, which is very material and can only bring material benefits. Right? The scriptures we have are firmly based in Bhakti Yoga versus all these Karma Kanda rituals. We have the direct worship of the Lord, right? Whereas those who are mostly involved in Vedic sacrifices and who have Vedic knowledge are engaging indirectly through worshipping the demigods, devatas. And most importantly, we have the guidance of true bhakti practitioners, advanced devotees, or spiritual masters. Whereas those, even in the mode of goodness, they have personalities that can help them as much in that mode, but not further. So this process is very extraordinary and made so practical and merciful by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada. So we should appreciate the opportunities that it's giving us to truly be transcendental and to truly transcend the modes, and we can benefit from it so much if we sincerely take to it. So before I close, there's one interesting point that Raghunath Prabhu was bringing to my attention as well, just out of interest, that we know that Lord Balaram has two consorts, one is Revati and one is Varuni, but there's also a goddess that our Acharyas mentioned named Kanti. It's also described as a consort of Lord Balaram. So in Canto 10, in chapter 65, in text 31, it's stated that this goddess brought a necklace to Lord Balaram when he came out of the water of the Yamuna. And Sridhar Swami says that Kanti is actually Lakshmi. And it makes sense because Lakshmi is the consort of when Lord Balaram expands as Lord Sankarshan, who is a four-armed Vishnu form in the second Chaturvyuha. So therefore she becomes his consort. So Kanti is Lakshmi's particular expansion for Lord Balaram. So there's three consorts that our Acharyas mentioned, Varuni, Revati and Kanti. This is something interesting. Okay, so we will stop here. Thank you all so much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki. Are there any questions or comments, corrections? Yes. Do you want to wait for the mic? Did not okay, can you try and okay. Okay. Yeah.
How does the general people know when it's time for a new yoga dharma, and when the last dharma has passed and it is a new one?
So very nice question. So it's actually one of the Lord's incarnations, or class of incarnations, called the Yuga Avatar, that comes to initiate it. So there's 6 main classes of incarnations of the Lord. There's his Leela avatars, Manvantar avatars, Yuga avatars, Guna avatars, the Purusha avatars, and there's one more. It'll come to me. So in those main categories of avatars, of course there's overlaps. There are some Yuga avatars or Manvantara avatars that are also Lila avatars. But the important thing is that there's always a mission that the Lord has to accomplish. And that's also what distinguishes a false avatar from a real avatar. Right? They must come according to what Scripture says. So the mission of the Yuga avatar is to deliver the process of religion for this age. And so we find that not even the other incarnations or expansions of the Lord will take over that mission. For example, when Lord Chaitanya came to deliver the process of chanting for this age, Lord Nityananda was already on the planet. He's 10, 12 years older than Lord Chaitanya, right, by manifest pastimes. And Advaita Acharya, I think, is like 50 years older. And both of them are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but neither of them took that responsibility upon themselves. It is the Yuga avatar whose mission it is to deliver the process. So in the previous ages, there were other personalities who appeared. Right? Like in the Treta Yuga, there was Yagya, who initiated sacrifice. And he has the implements of Yagya, the ladle, the spoon. You've seen the spoon that we pour the ghee into the... Yes. So the Yuga avatar comes with his implements. Right? Just as Lord Chaitanya comes with his Sangopangastra Parshadam, he comes with his weapons, right? Which is, we know, his associates, his beauty, his the things that he needs to spread the mission that he's come to establish. Then His Holiness Parthasarathi Das Goswami, for the second part of your question, he explained this very nicely in a class once, that there's a junctional period when the ages change over. So where there's a junction, right, it's called a sandhya. Sandhya is Sanskrit for junction. The old procedure, the previous yuga dharma, will still be existing along with the new one. So therefore we find that we're still engaging in deity worship. And in some ways even the previous yuga dharmas are there. Right? Like Yagya is still there, but not as the process of deliverance for this age. Yagya is there more for the samskars, right? For those ritualistic ceremonies that we require. And Yagya is important for purification, but it's not the Yuga Dharma. Does it make sense? So it doesn't mean that the Yuga Dharmas disappear. It just means that they don't have the same meaning or the same, we can say, ability that they had before. Mainly because we don't have the ability to perform them that way. Doesn't mean that they're not powerful. Right? We just can't perform Yagya the way people could in order to attain deliverance. Right? Same way with deity worship. We know that our deity worship standards, though very heartfelt, are not as the way they used to be. And we're finding so many temples are closing, especially in India. Eventually, deity worship will, or may, come to a complete halt, especially with Kali Yuga. And the chanting will be the only process that people will be able to do, because there's so much of degradation that's predicted. Although something that's very interesting, very unique about Kali Yuga is that there's a Satya Yuga within Kali Yuga, right, for the next 10,000 years. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. But people will actually be of the quality of, thanks to the power of the chanting of the holy names, they'll be of the quality of Satya Yuga. So they'll be able to actually meditate through the holy names, because we read that reference from the 9th canto. People were able to meditate on the pranava. What's the pranava? The pranava at the time was Om Tat Sat. The pranava of this time is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So you can develop the same meditation in this golden period, the Satya Yuga within Kali Yuga, through the chanting of the holy names. The difference then, you may ask, why was there a need for the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra over Om Tat Sat? Right? Why didn't that come? Om Tat Sat is chanted by birth brahmanas only. You have to be qualified in that way. And in Kali Yuga, we can only produce Pancharatriki brahmanas who are purified by the process of devotional service and ritual and become brahmanas, right? Even if they're not birth brahmanas. So the Maha Mantra is a more merciful form of Om Tat Sat. Can be chanted by anyone, even if you're not a birth brahmana. Same mantra, same power, just more merciful in Kali Yuga. Does it make sense? Any other questions? Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to touch on I know back in the day, for Lord Balaram's appearance, they used to have Varuni, and I don't know if they've now suspended that because devotees used to act in a very, very unusual way. If I knew Bilva Mangal, after he had a few Varunis, I actually didn't know Bilva Mangal. So I don't know if they've stopped it because of that, but whatever reason, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think they used to ferment it from some weeks before. Then the other point I was going to say was, I read somewhere where the devotees were telling Srila Prabhupada about there was a sap that the devotees were extracting and that they were drinking, and because it was taken directly from the tree, they felt it was okay because it was natural. Then they brought it to Prabhupada's attention that that sap actually had some alcoholic effects. So Prabhupada told him, okay, bring that sap and come. And he even tasted it.
Okay.
And he gave it to the other devotees that were sitting there to taste. And then he said, okay, going forward, we will stop this practice because I can see that when it's taken in fresh, maybe it's got very little alcoholic properties. But over a period of time, when it starts to ferment, it's going to have properties.
Sure.
So anything that alters your consciousness
Yes.
is not good because it makes you behave in an unnatural way, in an unnatural state.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada said that as of today, this all stops. Drink now, finish it up, and no more after this, and then they'll stop.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think that's very important to state because, some arguments may be for things like cannabis that it's natural, but it's got nothing to do with whether something is synthetic or natural. Everyone knows that the purpose of spiritual life is Krishna consciousness. This is why Srila Prabhupada incorporated that term in the name of his movement. You can't be fully conscious of Krishna if your consciousness is altered. Simple as that. So any substance, natural or not, that affects your consciousness, even things like onion and garlic and mushrooms, will not be conducive for your spiritual life. You have to be in your full faculties in order to serve the Lord and please the Lord and attain Him in the end. And that is also why, some people, especially in the beginning, we remember of Srila Prabhupada establishing the movement in the West, would say that they were inducing spiritual visions or spiritual consciousness by substances. But there's no purity of consciousness there. Nobody can even say, these are very, very subjective visions or very, very subjective experiences, that this is anything spiritual. So in aiming for that absolute level of purity so that we can come in contact with the Supreme Pure, we eliminate everything that's not pure. It's as simple as that. So definitely it's not encouraged, any kind of substances. But because of that, there's so many different herbs and creepers that they have put forward as being the Soma plants. Many, there's a long list of stuff. To the point where there's one of them that's like the leading candidate, I think. So in some parts of India, they actually do produce it as part of their yagyas. And I assume, of course, the yagyas that are dedicated to Indra and so on. But for us, none of that is relevant. Like Prabhupada says, we stay very far away from it. But thank you for that. I've never heard of that pastime before. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you. Any more comments or questions? Okay. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Hare Krishna.